The economics of COVID-19, the new endemic. Is COVID-19 now a universal endemic, and has humanity already begun to coexist with it? How will the global economic recovery in 2022 be affected by Omicron, and why do economists believe that it is no longer the main threat to the global economy? We all hate COVID-19 and all its new, old, and future variants. However, all signals point that it has become an endemic. Just like the influenza virus, it's here to stay, and it no longer can be an excuse for governments, central banks, and corporations to undertake unnecessary measurements that hamper the economic, health, and social recovery in 2022 and beyond. Welcome to the World Econ News, your daily dose of economics and finance. If you're interested in topics influencing the world's economies and global financial flows, this is the place for you. Watch till the end if you want to get the latest on everything. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification button to get the latest updates. Let's go. There is mounting scientific evidence that COVID-19's new variants is causing mild symptoms and less hospitalization, and even fewer deaths. Like many other viruses, it has evolved to keep the host alive in order to maintain continuity. I do remind you here that it's still dangerous, so please do take preventative measures. Wendy Barclay, a virologist at Imperial College London, recently said, "I was thoroughly expecting that this new coronavirus would adapt to humans in a meaningful way, and that would probably mean increased transmissibility." Omicron, or COVID-19 in general, is well on its way to infect most people on the planet. It won't be easy for the global economy and social systems. Here is a comparison example. Imagine 8 billion people getting mild or medium influenza, a couple of times or more in as little as 12 months. Yes, it would mean serious disruptions to all aspects of life and business in poor and rich nations alike. According to evolutionary biologist Jesse Bloom, the new pathogen would not be eradicated. Rather, it would become endemic, the fifth coronavirus to permanently establish itself in humans alongside 4 seasonal coronaviruses that cause relatively mild colds and have been circulating in humans for decades or more. It's important to note here that most virologists and biologists have the same opinion. Governments around the world are becoming more and more aware that lockdowns and extreme preventative measures are no longer needed since the virus is here to stay and is no longer as deadly as before. I'll talk about the economic effects later in this video. Since COVID-19 began, many studies have been conducted, and so far all evidence points that its kill ratio is less than 1%. It was never exceedingly deadly in the first place. However, the side effects it can leave are numerous, painful, and can last for years, regardless of whether you were vaccinated or not, as per scientific research. The global anti-mandatory COVID vaccination movement argues that for people who do not have serious health complications and are not senior citizens, the natural human immune system in people is naturally strong enough and as effective as the vaccine. They note that vaccines do not stop a person from getting the viruses nor long COVID. They also argue that high numbers of new COVID cases among unvaccinated people are normal, since these people did not get exposed to the virus previously, while the vaccinated people have been exposed to it through vaccines that consist of the virus's RNA. Hence, it's a natural phenomenon. The European Medicines Agency head of vaccine strategy, Marco Cavalieri, recently said, "While the use of additional boosters can be part of contingency plans, repeated vaccinations with short intervals would not represent a sustainable long-term strategy. A strategy of giving boosters every 4 months hypothetically poses the risk of overloading people's immune systems and leading to fatigue in the population." In a nutshell, the global social and healthcare system has adapted to COVID-19 as a new endemic. The number of annual COVID deaths will be somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million, similar to the number of annual deaths due to influenza. However, workers and professionals in the healthcare systems from around the world agree that COVID requires more hospitalization capacity than the flu because it can lead to some yet to be understood and scientifically justified side effects. Thus, more money and healthcare professionals are needed in the long term. Another evidence that COVID has become endemic is the recent Pfizer antiviral pill, Paxlovid, which was authorized for use in people over 18 with mild to moderate COVID and at least one risk factor for developing severe illness. Let's now answer the second question. How will the global economic recovery in 2022 be affected by Omicron, and why do economists believe COVID is no longer the main threat to the global economy? There is no question that the spread of COVID does cause some serious economic and business disruptions, as I told you earlier, just like influenza. If too many people have it, it will cause a disruption, and unlike the flu, over-the-counter pills for taming COVID symptoms are not yet available. Hence, 2022 will be a year of disruptions. Some governments are trying to limit such disruptions by showing more leniency in the new measures. Here are just a few examples. Canada will allow unvaccinated Canadian truckers to cross in from the United States, reversing a decision requiring all truckers to be inoculated against the coronavirus. Vaccinated travelers will no longer need a compelling reason to enter France and will not have to self-isolate when they arrive. The Kremlin called on officials to increase inoculation rates. Authorities in the capital, Moscow, announced that they will mobilize more hospital beds in anticipation of a sharp rise in cases. However, they did not mention any strict lockdowns. South Korea will begin treating coronavirus patients with Pfizer's antiviral pills, making it the first Asian country to do so. Spain is treating COVID now as an endemic, and they're moving away from the detailed tracking system that the pandemic has required. The U.S. administration announced that the unvaccinated government employees should be tested weekly during on-site work, meaning they will not be fired or forced to work from home. In Denmark, the lawmakers agreed to ease restrictions, including reopening cinemas and music venues, as hospitalization rates and deaths have stabilized despite the surge in cases. Ireland has loosened travel restrictions for the vaccinated. It also allowed nightclubs to reopen, and it lifted the capacity limits for outdoor events, sporting events, weddings, and religious ceremonies. Germany shortened the isolation period for people who have tested positive for COVID-19. India began allowing fully vaccinated tourists to enter the country. These are just a few examples. All nations around the globe are beginning to ease restrictions and measures despite the surge of COVID cases. The new global reality is coexistence with the new endemic. Hence, the impact of COVID on the global economy in 2022 will be very limited. Of course, it will affect the economy, but the majority of economists agree the shape and size of economic recovery in 2022 will be overly decided by policymakers, central banks, and large multinational corporations. According to David Malpass, president of the World Bank Group, the world economy is simultaneously facing COVID-19, inflation, and policy uncertainty, with government spending and monetary policies in uncharted territory. Rising inequality and security challenges are particularly harmful for developing countries. Putting more countries on a favorable growth path requires concerted international action and a comprehensive set of national policy responses. According to Mari Pengescu, the World Bank's managing director for development policy and partnerships, the choices policymakers make in the next few years will decide the course of the next decade. Since 2022 began, uncertainty and fears by investors and businesses due to the vagueness and conflicting warning signs from the policymakers and central banks have been causing serious fluctuations in the stock markets, corporate behavior, and investment allocation. There are also the issues of soaring energy prices and continuous shortages of raw materials, which are beginning to appear unjustified. All these factors are leading to business hesitation in employing new people. Hence, the unemployment rates too are fluctuating and not looking as good as they should be. It's becoming more obvious every day that the standoffs and competition between the political parties, along with the unpredictable behavior of central banks, in addition to the China-US-Russia competition for global hegemony, are the current obstacles to global recovery in 2022. In conclusion, COVID-19 and its variants are no longer public enemy number one for the global economy in 2022. The biggest dangers this year will stem from inflation and the risk that policymakers and the central bankers will call the post-COVID recovery wrong. Would you like to learn more about what influences the world economies and global financial flows? Click on one of the videos that shows up on the left or go to our channel to find other interesting topics. I'll see you next time.